President Trump is considering pardons for several Americans who were accused or convicted of war crimes. CBS News has learned the pardons could include a former Army Green Beret charged with killing an unarmed Afghan man and a former Blackwater security contractor accused of killing unarmed civilians in Iraq. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin reports from the Pentagon.
My daughter was a year and a half when he went to prison, and she's 6 now. We drive from Texas to Oklahoma pretty much every single week.
Kristen Slough's husband, Paul, is one of 4 Blackwater security guards accused of opening fire on Iraqi civilians in 2007. He's been in prison for 4 years.
We're really hopeful that they'll take a look at it and say, you know what, this doesn't make sense.
Former Army Green Beret Matthew Goldstein has been charged with premeditated murder of an unarmed Afghan man suspected of being a bomb maker. Last December, the president tweeted, "I will be reviewing the case of a U.S. military hero." Goldstein has admitted the killing, but his wife has conducted a very public campaign in his defense.
Did your husband assassinate this suspected bomb maker?
Assassinate? No. My husband took care of an enemy combatant who did harm and was planning to do more harm.
At a town hall last night, presidential candidate Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who served as a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy Reserve, said pardoning those who had been tried by a jury of their peers is a mistake.
Other U.S. service members in a legal proceeding determined that they had committed crimes. That is undermining the foundation of American moral authority.
And David Martin joins me now from the Pentagon. David, you've reported that at least 2 of the cases being reviewed have not gone to trial yet. So would these pardons effectively close these cases?
They would. The president has the power to simply have the charges against these men dismissed. And I'm no legal authority, but we've been told by experts in military justice that no president has ever pardoned a serviceman before a trial in which he is accused of murder. So if these pardons do occur, and all we know is that the paperwork process has begun, but if these pardons do occur, they would be a first.
Well, there are reports, David, that the White House requested this process be expedited. Why is that?
Well, the wheels of justice are notorious for how slowly they turn. The paperwork was requested from the Pentagon on Friday. Memorial Day is only a week away. That would be a record time for the pardon process. So it really suggests that the skids are greased here and that the decisions are in effect already made, and the only thing that has to be done is to complete the paperwork, which is considerable. These are complicated cases. There are lengthy investigations and pre-trial motions, and all of the paperwork that goes into these legal proceedings, especially when it's a murder case.
I also, David, want to ask you about Iran. Over the weekend, President Trump warned Iran never to threaten the U.S. again, saying it will be the country's end. Just last week, the president said he doesn't want to go to war with Iran. Can you give us some context how things got to this point?
Well, it seems a little like whiplash.
Right.
I think what happened is last week, at the end of last week, it appeared that tensions were easing. The Iranians had dialed back on a few of the threatening things that U.S. intelligence had seen them do. Specifically, they had unloaded some ballistic missiles from small boats in a Iranian port. And they had also done nothing to interfere with the passage of 2 U.S. ships through the narrow Strait of Hormuz, which is frequently where Iranian Navy vessels harass U.S. ships as they go in and out of the Persian Gulf. So it seemed like both sides were taking a step back. President Trump said he hoped there would not be a war. But then on Sunday, there was a rocket attack into the green zone in Baghdad No one was injured. The rocket landed about a mile away from the U.S. Embassy, which is inside the green zone. But it certainly appeared as if that might be an attack by a pro-Iranian militia inside Iraq. In other words, an Iranian attack against Americans, only done through these cutouts of Iranian militias. And that is exactly the kind of activity that people like Secretary of State Pompeo said the U.S. is never again going to tolerate, these deniable attacks against Americans. And I think that is what prompted the tweet about the consequences of war for Iran if it were to challenge the U.S.
So, Connecticut Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, who is on the Foreign Relations Committee, accused Republicans of twisting U.S. intelligence on Iran to, quote, make it sound like Iran is taking unprovoked offensive measures against the U.S. and our allies. David, what do we know about what the intelligence actually says?
Well, I think it's more the sequence in which the intelligence was collected. There was a very clear sequence of the U.S. announcing that it would no longer grant waivers that allowed Iran to sell its oil to a number of different countries. And senior officials in the Trump administration started saying that the goal was to drive Iranian oil exports to zero. If Iranian exports go to zero, the Iranian economy tanks. And the intelligence suggests that Iran saw that as basically an act of economic war, and it had sort of two options. One, it could try to negotiate with the United States. Two, it could fight back using these proxy forces it has, like the Shiite militias in Iraq. And that appears to be what they have chosen to do, is not negotiate, but to fight back at a level that is just below a outright attack on the United States. And of course, that's a very dangerous game. I mean, you fire a missile into the green zone,
right.
You don't intend it to hit the American embassy, but what if it does? What then?
Right. Incredibly high stakes. All right, David Martin at the Pentagon. David, thank you.
Sure thing.